It didn't feel like a turning point. There was no dramatic announcement. No moment where anyone said, "This is where it ends." Commander Hiroshi Tanaka only noticed that the sky had changed. At first, it was just noise. A distant hum. The kind you ignore because war is always loud. But this sound didn't fade. It grew, layered, multiplied. When he looked up, the sky above the Pacific wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied. American aircraft. Not a wave. Not a formation. A sequence. One after another, filling the air with motion that didn't seem to stop. Japan had prepared for a short war. A sharp one. A decisive one. Every plan assumed speed, surprise, and superiority of skill. What Tanaka was seeing didn't fit any plan. The radios began to speak in fragments. Reports came in half-finished, interrupted by static or silence. One carrier damaged. Another burning. Aircraft missing. Pilots not returning. This wasn't chaos yet. That came later. This was realization. Japan had built its navy carefully. Painfully. Each carrier was a national effort. Each pilot represented years of training, discipline, and sacrifice. They were irreplaceable in the short term. Everyone knew that. It was the trade-off Japan accepted in exchange for excellence. But excellence only matters when the other side plays the same game. America wasn't. Tanaka didn't consciously sit down to calculate anything. His mind did it automatically. One loss here meant months to recover. One loss there meant years. And yet the American aircraft kept arriving as if loss didn't matter at all. That's when the war changed shape. Not tactically, existentially. Because war isn't decided by who fights harder forever. It's decided by who can afford to keep fighting when effort no longer matters. The battle unfolding in the Pacific wasn't just ship against ship or pilot against pilot. It was economy against economy. Industry against industry. Japan had optimized for brilliance. America had optimized for volume. Back home, Japanese factories worked around the clock. They were efficient, precise, limited. Across the ocean, American factories were doing something different. They weren't chasing perfection. They were chasing scale. Ships were being assembled the way appliances are made. Aircraft rolled off production lines faster than crews could be trained to fly them. The United States wasn't fighting this war like a duel. It was fighting it like a logistics problem. And logistics always wins. As smoke rose from the damaged carriers, Tanaka understood something that would take years for the world to fully grasp. This war wasn't being decided in the Pacific. It was being decided in steel plants, oil refineries, and assembly lines thousands of miles away. Every Japanese pilot lost was a permanent subtraction. Every American pilot lost was a delay. That asymmetry changes everything. It doesn't matter how brave you are when replacement is instant. It doesn't matter how skilled you are when the other side can fail repeatedly and still move forward. Japan had assumed that early victories would break American will. That shock and humiliation would force negotiation. What they misunderstood was scale. America could absorb shock. It could absorb loss. It could absorb embarrassment. Because it wasn't wagering everything on a single decisive moment. It was wagering on time. And time, once weaponized, becomes unstoppable. This realization didn't arrive as panic. It arrived as a quiet certainty. Japan could still fight. It could still win battles. It could still surprise, damage, and inflict pain. But it could not change the direction anymore. From this point on, every victory would cost more than it gained. Every loss would accelerate the inevitable. The war had become arithmetic. Fuel consumption, replacement rates, pilot training cycles, shipping capacity. Courage no longer shifted outcomes. Only production did. And production had no loyalty to ideology or honor. It only answered capacity. Years later, when historians would look back, they would point to famous battles, dramatic speeches, and iconic moments. But the war didn't turn in those moments. It turned when one side realized it was fighting infinity with scarcity. Japan's leadership would never publicly admit this realization. Nations rarely do. Instead, they reframe, escalate, and commit deeper. Because admitting inevitability is more dangerous than losing. So the war continued, island by island, year by year, loss after loss. Not because victory was possible, but because systems don't know how to stop themselves. Tanaka survived the war. Many didn't. He would later say that the most frightening moment wasn't under attack. It was the moment he realized the enemy wasn't trying to be clever. They were trying to be endless. And once a war becomes endless, it stops being a contest. It becomes a process. One that grinds forward, indifferent to belief, pride, or sacrifice. History often tells us wars are won by heroes. The truth is colder. They are won by supply chains,